Here's a segment from a recent Gun Talk radio episode. You can listen to all the Gun Talk radio podcasts however you tune in, or check out guntalk.com for more. As you might know, I like to talk about rifles a lot. I mean, I like all guns, obviously, handguns, shotguns, rifles, but there's just something about rifles and tweaking them and tinkering with them. It's just, there's like this never-ending thing, maybe because you can never get it perfect, so you always get to tinker and play with them and all of that. And one of the gurus that I listen to, pay attention to, I read his work, is John Barsness, and he joins us right now. Hello, John. How are you?
Good. How are you, Tom?
I am excellent. You've been a gun writer, because you were an outdoor writer before. You kind of drifted into the whole hunting and gun specialty and created the concept of the rifle loony, those of us who just will dive down any available rabbit hole when it comes to rifles.
Yeah, we're kind of like that. It's amazing.
So where did the term rifle loony come from?
It means that you obsess about them to the point where you're always sort of looking for the rifle that will change your life.
You say that as though it's a bad thing.
And then when you get it, you try to change it to change your life even more.
That's right. He said, yeah. I have found the perfect rifle. Now I'm going to mess around with it until I'm not satisfied with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, well, and I've sent you a note to what I have done. And, I will tell you, for those who don't know, if you want to follow along with John and what he does, is the various books that he and his incredibly talented and lovely wife put out, riflesandrecipes.com. You can take a look at that. Oh, and I just see there, you've got the latest. You got book 3 of the big book of gun gack.
Yes, there now. Yeah, there's a sort of a stack of them, and this one goes into some more interesting stuff. The first one was more of a book of hand loads and the basic stuff. This one goes into some more interesting questions, or at least I think so, and some of the readers even think so.
Well, and if you're into the esoteric stuff, if you like to, like I said, down the rabbit hole and find out interesting detail. I mean, this is a detail level that those of us who are into it find it thrilling, and the rest of the world would be bored to tears. But that's okay, because we're not them.
Yeah. As Eileen sometimes says when I start talking gun gack with my friends, she says, are my eyes glazing over yet?
It probably doesn't take long. And she actually knows this stuff. She's a really good hunter, too.
Yeah, she's a really good hunter, and she knows she's been hanging around with me long enough. She says I get scared sometimes how much I know about this stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so you and Ron Spomer are 2 of my sources of information I pay a lot of attention to. Both of you are decades ahead of me in getting a new ultralight arms, a Melvin Forbes and 284, and I just ordered one. And I just think that's kind of got to qualify me at least a little bit as a rifle loony.
Well, it's kind of like, maybe just starting graduate school. Yeah.
There you go. So 284, for those who don't know, explain that cartridge, if you would, and why somebody today would want one. Or would he?
Well, what happened, the 284 was introduced in the early 1960s by Winchester as a cartridge to fit in one of their modern lever actions and then in their modern semi-auto. Mm-hmm. And it was for people who, back then, those were both popular for deer hunting. But it didn't sell all that well, probably because the rifles didn't sell all that well, and eventually became a more specialized cartridge for rifle loonies to put in bolt actions.
Right.
Partly because it provides an awful lot of power, sufficient power for most big game hunting in a very small package. And that's why Melvin Forbes uses it. And when he built his first ultralight arms rifle in 1985, he chambered it in the 284 for that very reason. It basically performs much like a 270, kind of a combination of a 270 and a 308 Winchester.
Okay, but in a short-action rifle.
Bullets. But in a short-action rifle, so he could make the rifle as light as possible. And that's how the 284 has survived. Is a ideal cartridge for short-action rifles as an all-around game cartridge.
You're being generous to say it survived because it almost didn't. I mean, I'm looking at the modern reloading manuals. It's not even there. It's disappeared. It has been disappeared, as they say. And then it went away. You couldn't even buy brass for it, but it was saved by its offspring, wasn't it?
In a way, yeah. One of the interesting things is that, a lot of the rifle loonies made Wildcat cartridges out of the 284 case, and one of the most successful was the 6.5 284, which Norma eventually made into a commercial cartridge, which brought about an interesting phenomenon, is that when Winchester basically almost never makes 284 brass anymore, but when somebody decides to build a 284 or buy a 284 from Melvin Forbes, they often buy 6.5 284 Norma brass and neck it back up again.
Neck it back up to what it was originally.
Yes, exactly.
And the people and the long-range shooters love the 6.5 284, and then they figured out that it's pretty hard on barrels. So they said, well, what would happen if we necked up the 6.5 284 to 7 millimeter and made it, the 284?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, good deal. I think you'll love that rifle.
I know I will. I mean, anytime you can get a 140 or 150 grain 7 millimeter bullet at 2,900 to 3,000 feet per second, there's pretty much nothing you can't shoot into. And herein lies the problem, John. This is where I'm going to lay it at your feet. When you really start getting into this stuff, although we don't like to admit it in public, the reality is you can take any one of these really good calibers, cartridges, from 6.5 to 30-06-ish, and they all work really well if you just want to go shoot a critter and have it fall down. And so then you have to kind of strain to find reasons to have, the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rifles, don't you?
Well, yeah, and what you'll often find is that they'll all do pretty much the same thing when you go hunting, but then you can talk about the minutia of each rifle and expand your rifle looniness.
There you go. I also have been from the very beginning. The first centerfire rifle I ever fired, and I still have it, was my mother's 257 Roberts, which actually is stamped 25 Roberts. It's that old.
Oh yeah,
pretty cool.
That is an old one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the chamber the standard 257 Roberts chamber though?
There is that question, and I've been thinking about that. I haven't shot it in 35 years, and I'm thinking, I know we shot just factory ammo in it, and who knows what the chamber really is, because there was a difference between the original 25 Roberts and the Remington 257. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yep.
Yep, I need to make a chamber cast of that. Let me ask you something. I threw something out on the show last hour, talking about the 6.5 Creedmoor. Massive popularity of it and all. And so, it's a 6.5 by 55 Swede with a fast twist rate. Big effing deal. But, and here's what I think it has done more than anybody understands or realizes, is it has educated and convinced an entire generation of hunters that you don't need a Magnum to shoot a deer.
Or an elk. Even.
Or an elk.
Yeah.
And it actually makes them better shots because of the lower recoil. And if you're a better shot, you put the bullet in the right place. If you put the bullet in the right place, then it's time to go sharpen your knife.
Yep, exactly. In fact, I know a guy in Montana. He's in his mid-30s, and he was one of those younger guys who thought he needed some sort of really hard-kicking 300 Magnum to kill elk. Mm-hmm. And then his wife wanted to start hunting, and so he got her a 6.5 Creedmoor, which was the thing to do then. And he went to sight it in at the range and try it out. And he said, "Hey, I kind of like this." And now he's shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor too. Yep.
Well, yeah, I mean, and people are figuring out and it's what a lot of people, veterans, have known for a long time. I can kill an elk with a 280 Remington just as dead as you can with your 300 Magnum blaster.
Yes, and part of it's the bullets are so good these days.
Well, that's true.
There are big game bullets that will do things with 2/3 the bullet weight or half the bullet weight that old-fashioned bullets did. Will penetrate as deeply and expand well. Yeah.
The monolithics, the Barnes being the prototype of that, drop down in bullet weight and still get the same kind of ballistic performance, terminal performance. And it's kind of hard for those of us who've been around a long time because we have these ideas of, for a 7mm, it should be a 160 grain bullet. For a 30 caliber, it should be a 180 grain bullet. And all that was based on the bullet design from 40 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, even Eileen, my wife, she started hunting elk with a 270 Winchester, which is her big gun then. Mm-hmm. And eventually and it was an ultralight arms. Oh. But eventually the recoil got to be too much for her. And so she started stepping down in caliber and bullet weight. And her last two elk she's killed with the 257 Roberts using a 100 grain bullet and the 308 using a 130 grain bullet. And both of them just died promptly. Yes.
I'm sorry. I read on the internet that those bullets would bounce off of an elk.
Well, those elk didn't think so.
And they tasted pretty good too.
Oh yeah. She shot a couple of very nice. One was a medium-sized cow. One was a great big cow, and they both tasted fine and put a lot of meat in the freezer.
Speaking of which, I should let people know that Eileen also turns out a lot of really good wild game cookbooks, also available at riflesandrecipes.com, between what you guys do there. Chief Rifle Loony himself, John Barsness. John, you also have, is it a newsletter you put out for the Rifle Loonies?
Yeah, 4 times quarterly, Eileen and I write a newsletter, magazine, whatever you want to call it, on the internet.
Okay.
And we talk about game cooking and rifles and hunting and all that related stuff. And it's and one of the nice things about it is we can talk about whatever we want, and what our readers say they want to hear. They can give us feedback pretty easily. Yeah.
Okay. Good. And you're doing that right there in Montana.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We just sit around and write it out and ship it out on the internet.
Question for you. First of all, I had an announcement to put on the air. I have 10 large rifle primers, $100 is the asking price. Don't try to talk me down. I know what I have here. So there you go.
Okay. I'll pass the word.
Yeah, right. 10 primers. That wasn't 1,000. That was 10.
Yeah.
It's crazy now, isn't it?
I'm making a note.
Yeah. It's a little bit nuts. A local store here had you could get 1,000 large rifle primers for $225. I'm not making that up.
Oh, geez.
That's the worst I've seen.
Well, I think I've heard of one worse on Gunbroker or someplace like that, one of the internet bidding sites. Yeah.
Yeah, people lose their minds doing that.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Question for you. Somebody wants to get into reloading. People are interested in it now. Putting aside the whole availability of components, I mean, that'll get sorted out. Would you agree it's two things? One, it's never been easier to get started. And number two, it's never been more intimidating because you read all this stuff on the internet about ladder test and everything else, and you could just get bogged down in the minutia of it.
Yes. Yeah, and that's because of rifle learning. We like to make things complicated so that we can spend more time fiddling with rifles. But in reality, you can make really fine hunting ammo with very few tools. Some of us started out with a tool called a Lee loader, which all you need is a loader and some powder and primers and a hammer of some sort.
And a hammer.
A chunk of 2x4.
And the first time you whack that hammer on that thing, you're thinking, I hope this doesn't blow up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. It's okay.
But they still makes Lee loaders. And I actually tested one a few years ago just because I was curious again. I bought one for the 22 Hornet. Mm-hmm. And one of the big advantages of them is that if you're loading for just one rifle, and they'll make very accurate ammunition.
Really?
Because of the way they're basically constructed like the match dies that bench rest shooters use.
Huh. Well, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, the bench rest, they're using an arbor press. Yeah. They're pushing the bullets in straight. Yeah. You're getting good alignment. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, I shot the smallest groups I've ever shot with my very accurate Ruger number 122 Hornet ever when I tried the Lee loader again.
I'll be darned. And you could probably get into that for well under $100.
Oh, I think the retail price is still under $50.
Wow. really something else.
Yeah.
So, for those who may not know, it used to be you got into reloading because you could just simply make better ammo. You had no access to premium bullets. You had to reload to do that. And also, the ammo wasn't all, frankly, the factory ammo wasn't all that accurate, and you could really improve things. Now we have premium bullets across the board in factory ammo, and we have factory ammo that shoots so well it's spooky, and rifles that shoot so well they're spooky. Why does somebody want to reload these days?
Well, if you want to shoot a lot, it still is a way to save money. If you do it with factory ammo, you're going to spend several times as much money, especially if just to shoot factory ammo. But you can make some of the money back by selling the brass to rifle loonies. The fired brass to rifle loonies.
People like us.
Yeah, people like us.
Yeah.
But yeah, the factory ammo has improved enormously, and it's partly because a lot of hand loaders started bragging about how well their rifle shot and proved it, and other shooters kind of demanded it. Matter of fact, I was just testing a rifle from a specialty company the other day, a 6.5 PRC, and I was shooting Hornady factory ammo in it and getting groups of 0.3 of an inch at 100 yards.
With factory ammo?
With factory ammo, or less, or even a little smaller. Yeah, basically all three shots touching. Yeah. And it's hard to beat that.
And you know what happened? I mean, to put a fine point on it, hand loaders embarrassed the ammo makers into upping their game because they just said, your ammo sucks. We're making better ammo than you are now. I mean, that's what happened.
Yeah. That is what happened. And plus, as you noted, there was also the ability to use better bullets. Nosler partitions, which were the first real premium bullet in America, and still one of the best, were introduced in 1947. But no factory used them in ammo until the 1960s, and that was Weatherby. Weatherby was the first one.
Yeah, Weatherby started, and then Federal Premium picked it up. Yeah, sure did. Very cool. It is a lifelong hobby, and reloading becomes a hobby in and of itself, and you're always chasing that perfect group, that perfect load. And also you could do things like, I've been loading some loads with Trail Boss for a kid who just got a 7mm 08, and we're getting him started with really light recoiling loads, so we could do things like that as well.
Exactly, and that's very common. It's a good thing to do. I have a younger friend here who has a daughter who started hunting this year. She's 10 years old. We first started hunting in Montana. And we kind of conspired together and got her a 243 Winchester. But even then, we loaded it down some because it could still kick a little too hard for a 10-year-old kid.
There you go.
And the bullet I suggested was one that would expand very easily at moderate velocities. It was the Nosler ballistic tip, 95 grain.
That's a great bullet.
And he worked up some loads for it, and she got 2 deer this year, shot them both in the heart, and they went down so quickly he could hardly believe it. So, he's ecstatic. He's ecstatic. Well, she's ecstatic. He sent us some photos the other day. Yeah.
That is terrific. Well, John, I'm going to refer people again. I want to suggest if you're at all interested in the stuff, go ahead and buy book 1, 2, and 3 of the big book of Gun Gack. I have 1 and 2. Got to get 3. I love your books. I love the way you write. And Eileen does a great job with the cookbooks. You guys together are an incredible team and really an asset to the hunting and shooting world.
Well, thanks, Tom. And we both love to talk to you about all sorts of stuff, too. And we love your program.
Well, thank you so much. Best, Eileen, and thanks for being here. Riflesandrecipes.com if you want to see what they're doing or order some of their stuff. We appreciate that.